Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandy Broadwell, and today I want to talk to you guys about my priority sci-fi TBR. These are the science fiction books that I most want to read. I want to give credit to Tori Tekken. She is the creator that recently did this video that inspired me to do it for myself, so I will link her video down below. I love sci-fi. I have always loved sci-fi for as long as I can remember, but in my adult life, I don't ever seem to prioritize it. It's always my second most read genre, trailing fantasy, but it's usually trailing it by quite a large number. If I read 40 fantasy books, I might read 20 sci-fi books, and I'd like for that to change. So I think this was a good video to kind of refocus me towards the books that I really want to get to. And I actually went through every single book on my want to read list on Goodreads, which is well over 400 books. And there were 75 plus sci-fi books that I considered putting on this list that did not have any duplicate authors or series. So I narrowed it down to 15 on your behalf. Let's kick it off. I'm gonna start. I have kind of three different categories. First category is owned TBR. Second category would be continuing series, and third category is just other that I'm very excited about. So in owned TBR, the first one is Hyperion Cantos. This is books 1 and 2 of the Hyperion series by Dan Simmons, and I recently picked this up when I was book shopping in New Orleans because I absolutely love this like campy, ridiculous 90s sci-fi book cover. It is just so silly. But Hyperion is a book that consistently gets a lot of praise and is considered very memorable, one of the real sci-fi greats. I believe it was originally published in the 90s or late 80s and is about a religious pilgrimage, I believe. Supposedly is inspired by the Canterbury Tales as well. So that sounds intriguing. I want to figure out what this is actually about and what the hype around it is for. So very, very high on my TBR. Another one that I picked up in that New Orleans book haul was Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. I have only read one other book by Neal Stephenson so far, and that was Seven Eves, which my brother recommended to me, and I read because of that. And I really, really liked it, and I think I have the potential to really like other books by Neal Stephenson. This is considered one of the greats of the cyberpunk genre. The description on the back sounds very silly, but it is about basically a hacker trying to hunt down some sort of villain in the infoverse. I don't know that that's necessarily my thing, but I'm gonna go along for the ride and see what I think. Next on my TBR is The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich. This one I believe I just picked up because I found it at a little free library and I've heard really good things about it. This is about like everyone wakes up one day and there's a box on their doorstep with a piece of string in it, and the length of the string determines how much longer you have left to live. And it just goes through a lot of different scenarios of different people experiencing this and what it means for them and how they choose to live their life with or without that knowledge. It's gotten a lot of praise from booktubers that I follow, so I'm just really interested to see how it would play out. Then we have Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. This is the start of a series that I believe is about a former artificial intelligence now inhabiting a human body. And I really don't know much else about it other than it is like a true space sci-fi sort of gig. And I have heard a lot of praise for Ann Leckie over the years, and I know that a standalone book in this series was on the Goodreads Choice Awards within the last year or two, and so that is what originally clued me into this. Second to last on my own TBR is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Again, a lot of these are ones that I just got really cheap at a used bookstore at some point or found in a little free library, and I recently just read The Monk and Robot duology by Becky Chambers, and it was a really, really cozy read. And I've heard that this is also a good cozy sci-fi, although this is actual novel length instead of 2 short novellas. So I will be interested to see if I enjoy cozy sci-fi in a novel-length format. I thought that the novellas were good, but I could see how they would potentially lose some of the intrigue for me if they were a bit longer. So I am hopeful that I won't find that to be the case and that I will have a really good time with this. But I believe this is about a kind of found family starship crew. And finally, the last one on my owned TBR, I just recently grabbed out of a little free library, surprise, surprise. But this is Old Man's War by John Scalzi. And I have recently read my first John Scalzi book. It was Starter Villain for the Cat vlog. I had a lot of fun with that vlog if you want to check it out. But Old Man's War is playing with the idea of how long it takes to travel in space, and the humanity is at war with some sort of alien species, and they have to travel years and years and years and years to actually get to the site of a battle. I think this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't think John Scalzi ever writes anything very serious, but my husband read this many years ago and he had fond memories of it, and so he is the one that originally recommended this book to me, so I've had my eye out for it ever since. So those are the ones that I just happen to have on my shelf. Some of them are much higher priorities than others, but because I do own them all, they are high on the priority list, regardless of whether I would have put them there before or not. Then I have 5 sci-fi books in the category that I'm considering continuing series. And so the first step on that is Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. This is book 3 of the Sun Eater series. And I really liked the first book in the Sun Eater series, and I really didn't like the second book in the Sun Eater series. Even though I thought that the concepts that were played with in the second book were really, really cool, I just didn't enjoy the writing, and I felt a little bit bored for a lot of the book. I felt like we were off on some side quests that really weren't integral to the plot. So I am a little anxious to pick up book number 3. I have heard it's a lot of people's favorite book in the series, and I think there are 8 books overall. So I am going to use book 3 to determine whether I will be continuing with the series or DNFing it entirely, but I should go ahead and make that decision soon before I completely forget everything that happened in book 1 and 2. Book 2 did make my worst books of the year video last year, which was a fun video to make, so I highly recommend that one as well. Next on my continuing series TBR is Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson. I actually own the other book in the series, which I forgot to bring outside with me because I forgot I was going to mention it. But the first book in this world is The Space Between Worlds, and I really found that to be a fun, intriguing read. It is about people who are hopping between parallel universes for their job, and the society that they live in is very starkly the haves and the have-nots, the kind of conspiracies that are happening behind the scenes in that beautiful walled city where all the haves are living. I did not know that this was going to be a series or a world when I read that a few years ago, but since then the author has published Those Beyond the Wall, which does not follow the same characters but is in that same setting, in that same world. So it's not necessarily a series, but I am intrigued to return to that world and learn more about it. I haven't heard super great reviews for this quote-unquote sequel, but I still want to give it a shot and see for myself. Next up is Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. This is book 2 in the Dune series, and to be honest, I love Dune. I have read that book at least 3 times, but I've never been inspired to continue. One, because the first book does completely feel like a satisfying, complete read, but also because I know quite a few people who have read the entire Dune series, and they said it gets out there, and not in a good way. I think it takes multiple books before it actually gets to that point, maybe 6 books in before I really have to worry, but I've just been a little turned off by that, and I was so happy with just the first book, I didn't feel the need to move on with it. However, I really, really loved the new Dune movies that came out, part 1 and part 2. Those were both part 1 and part 2 of the first one, but the same director has now said that he's going to make another Dune movie. And so, of course, that has to be based off of the sequel, Dune Messiah. And so that means I need to read Dune Messiah and find out what's going to happen, because I really feel like he faithfully adapted the first movie or the first book really, really well. And so I am intrigued to see what the second book is going to hold for me, and then I can be a good judge and fan once the third Dune movie comes out. Next up on the continuing series is Red Rising Era 2. I have read the first trilogy of Red Rising. I don't love it as much as I think a lot of people do. The first book I felt like was really kind of not for me, but I kept going because I heard that the kind of amateur writing and very like sexism circa 2012 got a lot better in books 2 and 3, and that was definitely the case for me. I did have a really good time, and they were enthralling reads that I flew through. I've been reluctant to start Red Rising Era 2 just because the final book hasn't come out yet, and so I was planning to read all of Era 2 kind of in the lead up to Red God, the 7th and final book, coming out. However, I do think there's a really good chance that that is going to come out in the next year or two, and so there's really no reason for me to hold off. I should go ahead and get those off of my TBR so that I can be on the hype train for Red God. And then my last one in the continuing series is Dungeon Crawler Carl. I also just read this first book in the series for the very first time. That's also in my cat vlog if you want to check that out. I loved Dungeon Crawler Carl. I wasn't planning actually to read that this year, but my family just started up a book club, and I chose the first book, and I chose Dungeon Crawler Carl just because the hype has been so high, and I wanted to find out what I was missing out on. I had major FOMO about Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm so glad that I picked it up. I think my family's gonna love it. We have our book club in 2 weeks, so I can't wait to see what they have to say. But I have been dying and chomping at the bit to just pick up book 2 right away, and I haven't wanted to do that because we haven't had our book club for it yet, and I don't want the story to get muddled before I move on. But I am anxiously anticipating continuing on with Dungeon Crawler Carl. There's a good argument to be made that this isn't sci-fi, it is more fantasy or sci-fantasy, but the premise is that Earth has been destroyed basically, and all remaining humans are forced to be on a alien reality TV show. So that sounds sci-fi enough for me. Slight shift in camera because my neighbor came outside and I didn't want to be awkward. The last 5 books on my top sci-fi priority list they're not books I own, they're not books that are part of a continuing series that I'm reading, they're just books that I'm excited about for one reason or another. So they're the miscellaneous category. So first on that list is All That We See or Seem by Ken Liu. I read The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I really had a good time with that last year, and this will be his first sci-fi that I will undertake. This is actually a new release that is coming out, I believe, in October this year, possibly November. So I honestly don't even remember what it's about. I just heard Ken Liu's coming out with a sci-fi book, and I want to see what he's got going on. Apologies for the barking dogs. The next one on this list is Two Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. This is a series that was originally recommended to me by my friend Ben. It's one of the few book series he's recommended to me that I haven't read before, and I was really intrigued by that. I think he has really good taste. It kind of fell off my radar again until I saw that Literature Science Alliance was reading this, I think, last year, and she was really intrigued by it and really liked it a lot. So it has moved up higher on my TBR because of that. And I know that the politics and culture of this world is super strange and unique. So that's really all I know about it, but I'm excited to give it a go. Then we have A Memory Called Empire. This is the first book in a duology by Arkady Martine. I have never read this author before. I've just heard from multiple people that this is really good, and I believe this is a pretty politically heavy sci-fi, and I usually love political intrigue. I feel like political intrigue is often something that I associate with fantasy more than sci-fi, so I think this will be really cool to take into that sort of setting. Second to last book on my priority sci-fi TBR is We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor. We Are Bob is a series that I believe is still ongoing. I think there's maybe 6 or 7 books already, and it is about a collective or like a person whose mind became immortal, and like now they're basically like alien technology. I could be completely off base here. I'm trying to remember from how other booktubers have pitched it before, but Daniel Green talks about this series quite a lot, and I've read other series that Daniel Green has recommended before, and it's usually a win for me. So I think We Are Bob has a pretty kind of silly and lighthearted sort of sci-fi, and I think that sounds like a lot of fun. The final book on my priority sci-fi TBR is Annihilation, or the Southern Reach series by Jeff Vandermeer. I know that there was a movie that came out about this a few years ago with Natalie Portman. I've heard the writing style is really unique, and this is about an alien planet, or potentially a region of a planet where every scientific team that they send in there never comes back out, and they lose the data. And so it is another team sent in to find out what happened to the last team that got sent into this basically dead zone, and what happens to them while they're exploring that area. I think that has some good like sci-fi horror vibes. I love a good sci-fi horror. I don't know if it actually is horror or if it's just sort of suspenseful or weird, but whatever it is, I'll be along for the ride, and I'm looking forward to it. So that's it. Those are my priority science fiction reads. Hopefully I can get to all of these in the upcoming year, or at least give them a shot. Please hold me to that. I want to make sci-fi a bigger priority in my reads. I would like it to be more 50-50 with fantasy rather than like 2/3 fantasy. We'll see if we can make that happen in the upcoming year. Let me know down in the comments below what are your priority sci-fi reads, or just what some of your favorite sci-fi reads are that you think should be on my list. Thanks so much for hanging out and tuning in. As always, please be kind, read more books, and hit the subscribe button down below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you again soon.